Oh, look at these faces and names that we know and love. Welcome to Tea Talk. We'll let people come in the door for just a minute because we're already 2 minutes after the hour, and then we'll dive right in with our guest, Hugh, today. I'm excited about today's conversation because it's different than anything we've done, and I love to sit back and learn. So thank you for being here with us, Hugh, and hi to the folks who are live. Hi, Tiffany and Zephy and Tara and everyone else who is going to watch this after that. So I'm going to just do a little brief overview of what we're going to get into, a brief overview of who Hugh is, and then they will start the presentation and we'll watch it until it ends. 20 to 30 to 40 minutes, wherever that goes, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. After that, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. So our overview, and I am just reading this bio and overview that is beautiful, is how do we dress the dead? How do we dress the dead so that one day they may nourish life? So taking, a green burial and putting a lot of art and ceremony and intention it even further. Hugh is a cultural worker and artist based in Las Vegas who began experimenting with the idea of deathwear, clothing adorned for those who have passed that may one day carry seeds that bloom new life. Rather, that is food, flowers, or otherwise. Their imaginative presentation will explore death and lifewear, biodegradable fiber materials, and ways to incorporate deathwear into everyday life. So my first question, which you probably already have in the presentation, but is like, where did this inspiration come from? Because it's beautiful and unusual. But first, a little more about our guest, Hugh is a queer Chinese cultural worker and multidisciplinary artist, again from Las Vegas. Making installations and fiber art is a way to return home to the soul. So it's all ceremony. They are a member of the Scrambled Eggs Collective, which curates pop-up, I feel like I always say this word wrong, please say the word for me.
Exhibitions.
It's just one of the words for me, and redistributes art supplies across Las Vegas. They create artwork and community with sentimental items and give the objects a new life and to connect more closely to the people they create with. He's exploring themes regarding the means of creative production and labor practices as they pertain to reconnecting with one's heart width. And I haven't ever put those words together before, and I love that. Labor sustainability, intergenerational activities, and care are important to Hugh's practice. So thank you for the intentionality of your work and for teaching us, and you can take it from here.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for being here and for, again, like welcoming me into your community. I really appreciate you all for giving me a platform to share my ideas. And I will go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so a little bit more about me as an artist is I work a lot with concept and radical imagination to think about a more heart-centered way of looking at the world. And in this project called Deathwear, I'm meditating on death and what clothing can bring about life as we bury bodies. I also wanted to mention that what I propose here is not in any way done or completed. And the questions I pose in this project is continuous. And I hope that whatever you learn here, you may take these ideas and bring it into your own like funerary directing or burial practices. And I'm just an artist who's just happened to be thinking about these things while I was in the last couple of years, I think. So how do I do this? Okay, a little bit about where I have come from, my work background, and the first seeds of Deathwear. And how it started was I used to work in the fashion industry. I've worked in production, footwear design, fast fashion, and through that whole process, it was really informative about how we dress. Like I was learning about how clothing can be a mode for storytelling, for telling the personality or idea of a single soul, like a single person through the way they wear. And at the same time, I'm seeing how we're creating like 30,000 sweaters and all of a sudden half of them will go into landfills. And oftentimes these labor practices are hidden away. And I'm glad that in the last, I think, 10 years, there's been more of like a change to want to learn about where clothes are made of, how do we source sustainable materials, how are we making sure that, you know, our garment workers are paid and compensated well. And it's still like a new thing, I feel like, to talk about these things and care about these things, because the laboring body is important. It shows up in everything we wear. So yeah, if we're designing clothing for life, when you want it to have less suffering in it, and that's something I kept thinking a lot about when I was living in New York City, working in all these different studios and brands. And this is a picture from backstage at one of the smaller brands I had worked at. And it was a lot of fun to create clothing in this way. But I realized for me, fashion and clothing had to be more of a circular system. Like it wasn't just about putting clothes on a body and then selling it, and then it might not even be bought, and so it'll be sent to another country to then be burned or just end up on land. And so that was back in before 2020. And in 2022, I got to go to an exhibit curated by curator and writer Tanya Gayer. And that really sparked ideas around death and curation in my practice. So these are some of the questions I pose to you as death workers. And how would a funeral look like when it's planned by an artist or a curator? So in this exhibit, I'll explain a little bit about what I saw. So when I entered the space, I saw these like cerulean blue voice sound bites on the wall. And the artist was explaining to me that these were sound bites of her mother right before she had passed away, of her telling her story. But instead of, you know, sharing these like very intense, sometimes traumatic experiences, it's like acknowledging that these parts of this person's life existed, but in a beautiful, but also like not so like vulnerable way. The table for her and I think it was 13 or 12 lilies were her mother's like favorite kind of flowers. There was a lot of talk about, you know, having conversation around the table. In the other room, which I don't have a video of, was like just her speaking in Spanish of her life, of her way of like having existed in this world. So it made me really look at, I guess, just like a funeral, like a processing in a way that I've never experienced. Because I feel like when in the more common like Western way of burials, it's like you stand in front of where the person's going to be buried in their coffin, and then it goes in the ground, and then that's the end of it, right? But then she's thinking about this in a way that's like, okay, what if we take things rather that's from the person's home or objects that were sentimental to them and place it and curate it in a way that's beautiful and honoring, and that you can invite guests to come in their own time instead of a one day thing. So yeah, so all that's to say, this is kind of starting to formulate, like the seeds are germinating in my brain for Deathwear. Yeah, so last year I got to have the opportunity to go to Vietnam. And I was thinking a lot about roots and ancestry. I'm from a part of China that is very close to Vietnam, and I was really interested to learn about the food and migration cultures there. Yeah, and during that time, I got to know some farmers and also just the history of the land, what happened after the American War there. They call it the American War, and how the chemical warfare that was dumped on the land kind of really, for a lot of places, like completely changed the fabric of land and how it could nourish people again. And so I got to meet a lot of different farmers who were, so in this photo on the right, I'm standing in front of one of my friends there whose parents own a organic herb farm. So they were finding out ways to grow again in a way that isn't how they were depleting the land before. So when I'm here, I'm thinking about, okay, like how are our bodies connected to the land? How are we able to nourish the land at the same time nourish ourselves? And with my background in fashion, I was thinking a lot about, okay, like how does that translate to clothing in a way that's like I'm planting these, seeds for native herbs. Okay, what if we planted seeds into clothes, right? Like what if the clothes were being buried with these future life that can potentially grow? Yeah, so on the left was at the permaculture farm. I stayed there for I think a month. And when you're in these spaces where there's no windows to kind of shield you from the outside world, I was living right next to chickens and all these critters and just kind of learning about the cycles of life. Like, for instance, if we had lights on past 7 p.m., the queen ants are going to come. So we have to turn off all the lights and kind of learn how the animals and plants and bugs kind of grow. So I was learning about life cycle that wasn't human centered, that it was, place centered. And during that time, I also got kind of sick because I didn't realize how humid Vietnam is, and kind of the big contrast between going from, dry desert to really humid tropical Southeast Asia. I had to basically pause for a moment to reassess, like, okay, I need to rest, I need to stop. And during that time, I met my friend Lynn, and this is Lynn. She is a farmer. She's also a single mother, and I love her so much. And she's the model and inspiration for the first Deathwear prototype, which is what she's wearing. And yeah, I think I made this whole thing by hand while I was sick. And what we did together, and she also agreed to be my model. But yeah, what we did was where we were on the farm was very rural in Deathfolx. And so I had asked her, I was like, hey, can you bring me anything like a breathable fabric? I have this idea. I would like to make it because I can't really like pull any weeds. I can't really do any of the stuff, I want to do, but she was like, yes, of course. And so one morning she went off on her moped and then brought me back some burlap and linen fabric, which is what she's wearing. And so I spent 3 weeks just sewing. I was also mending the clothes of the other farmers there because, I was staying there and I was supposed to work, couldn't work. So I just started mending all their clothes. And I got really into it. And then I was like, okay, like there's a bunch of seeds around. Not all of them were native seeds at the time because I just kind of work with what I got. But the idea for future iterations of this would be, to kind of like, I'll talk more about it in my later parts of the presentation, but like thinking about what are native and localized plants that you can put into your Deathwear. So during this day, she had finished the work for the day, and I just asked her to model for me. And all of I don't know if you could see in the little pouches, they carry soil. So in the soil, there's also seeds. And so there's seeds from different flower species. I think there was like a potato. One of Lynn's kids wanted to put like a piece of like the potato root in the dress. So I was like, yeah, let's try it. Like, who knows? So let's see. Can I play this video here? Okay. So this is the video I had initially made just to kind of share the idea.
The land is so beautiful. Just
Yeah,
have to say that.
thank you. Yeah. So yeah, that was just like a short clip of some of the stuff, like just a reel we had made together. The idea with putting soil into the pockets and then sewing the pockets closed, we were thinking about, okay, so Vietnam is a very humid space. So what if we actually hung the garment up and allowed the rain to just drizzle through? Like what kind of plants could grow? And yeah, this is a little bit more of a close up. There's some cats from the from the farm that we found and basically just fed them really, really fat. And so they followed us everywhere. And yeah, so yeah, each of these pockets, I was thinking about like just even from a design perspective and with the limited materials I have, um, just of like, okay, like these shapes, kind of on the backdrop of a beige fabric could look very beautiful. Um, I'm thinking about what I wanted. I would love to see Lynn wear because the whole time, you know, she was wearing just t-shirt and whatever joggers she had, and I wanted to see her in a dress. So I made this with my own kind of like aesthetic background, and yeah. And yeah, moving forward with this idea of deathwear, and thinking about the body, the dead body in relation to clothing, like what fiber materials are the easiest to decompose with the body? And I think most people kind of have an idea like natural fibers, plant fibers. But when you're, because I was thinking about, okay, what are breathable fabrics that will actually let the seeds kind of burst out from? And these are the four that I think would be great fibers. Like, I already work with burlap, and with how porous or not as dense burlap is, I think is a great fiber to, especially if you're burying a body, like for things to both go into it and out of it. Yeah, hemp. I've learned too about how also it's just sustainable. It can be grown and then what is it? Yeah, made into yarn or like a woven textile. Same with linen and cotton. But I feel like cotton may be, depending on like what kind of weight of cotton you use, it might be too dense as a fabric to dress the body. But yeah, I think there's a lot of wiggle room and a lot of design ideas you could talk to if you're able to talk to the person who's dying to talk about like what they will want to wear. But yeah, if that's an option. And so, and then there's some other sustainable materials to consider is algae, mycelium, and more. There's this, I think there's a word called like biofabrication that I learned when I was in school, at the New School. Yeah, so I studied fashion at the New School in New York. And I learned that we had this thing called the Healthy Materials Lab. And it's a free resource that you can go on and just look at, not even just for clothing, but it could be like for building healthy homes, for building healthy work or play environments. Like they have kind of researched into what materials are either biodegradable or cause less harm on the body than the things we've used in the past. And so the two that I've brought to show is like algae. It's a fabric that you could grow and it can photosynthesize like a plant. And yeah, so whoever, I think this designer is Roya Agigi, and you know that his clothes are made of algae and it can even create oxygen. And I feel like something breathable like that is great for planting seeds into. And I know there's a lot of talk about mycelium in the death doula industry, I'm sure. and how that's very beneficial to both like the decomposition of a body. But I think it's also a great way to, nourish soil that holds seeds in it. And yeah, I would suggest looking into the Healthy Material Lab if this is something you're interested in, especially creating your own clothing. And then I was thinking about planting seeds. So, if body oils are meant for burial, they are perfect. Like they're a garden for planting. And even though it may not be in the next season, or it'll take several generations, just having these materials may be really good for and beneficial for the soil, especially if it's hyper localized to the site of the burial. So for where I am in the desert, a lot of it would be like sagebrush. I'm thinking about like feeding birds and migrational butterflies. So what are some plants and food that can be grown here? Yeah, so. And I also think it's like doing this kind of practice and engaging in land while doing death work is a very meditative practice. Yeah, because it's kind of thinking about the body in a way that isn't just like it's going in the land, but then it's like it's going in the land and then what's next? And other things to consider, yeah, native species of seeds. If you can plan out the offering with the dying person, rather it's like if they want flowers, if they want plants, if they want food buried with them, what can they carry with them, even as they leave this earth? And what kind of styles of clothing does the deathwear feel best in? Because I feel like as this grows and it blooms, I would love to see like just different kinds of like if it's suiting, what kind of suiting or dresses or whatever gender affirming clothing, especially for folks who are dying who are trans or non-binary and gender non-conforming. Like what are ways of designing clothes for bodies that are not heteronormative? And yeah, that was my presentation. Thank you so much and appreciate tips. And also if anyone has questions or want to build on this idea, I would love to talk more about this. And yeah, thank you.
That was so good. I just am impressed on so many levels about your thoughtfulness and your skill and just how you just keep going back to this, like, we have to connect it back to the earth. We have to connect it back to the earth. And, I think that the fact that humans generally feel so removed from nature and from the cycle of nature is one of the most foundational problems that we have, that we suffer from. So I think this is such a beautiful way of doing so many things, of giving back to the earth, of honoring the dead in a really thoughtful way, of inviting people to participate in death care in a much more intimate way that doesn't have to feel scary. I think this is a really good way for that to happen too. Um, I don't think you said anything about this. Please correct me if I missed something, but do you know about natural organic reduction and water cremation?
No, you will definitely know more than I do.
I think you're gonna love it when you were talking about permaculture, and you're almost creating like a comparable practice for the clothing that we wear that the green burial movement is creating with what we actually do with our physical bodies. And so it's kind of the same question as like if we're returning our bodies to the earth once we no longer need them. And there's a beauty in that because it's with this recognition that everything we've ever worn and eaten and had comes from the earth, right? And like, why are we not giving our bodies back at the end? Why are we not? And when we look back in history at all different types of burial practices, it's really only the more modern times, that we've been embalming people and entombing people. And with I say that, and then you think of like the pyramids and entombment, but that was not for commoners, right? That was like it was a very small percentage of the population may have been preserved, and most people were just returned to the earth. And we don't do that anymore. In fact, we take measures to prevent that, to prevent decomposition, which, as you very like beautifully are showing here, decomposition leads to recomposition if we're thoughtful about the way that we're doing that. And so the green burial movement, those two methods, water cremation and natural organic reduction, are breaking down the body in a way that allows it to still be bioavailable to create new life. One of the ways is with water, and one of the ways is with earth and with soil. And in both cases, we're not doing anything to like confine that, right? We want it to grow, and we want the conditions to be prime for regenerative gardening. And so we could go on and on. I'm trying to make it as like, comparable as possible, but really beautiful relationship there, I think.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna look more into it now.
Yeah.
I have a lot, but I want to read some of these questions in here.
Cool.
One of the things Zephy wrote, what about bamboo as a fabric? Is that available?
I think so.
Okay.
I think with bamboo fabric, I have not personally worked with bamboo-based textiles for garment making. I know a lot of that is used for furniture, like for bedding and for pillow fabric, because it is so breathable and it is a very biodegradable fabric. I would suggest you try it. Like sow some seeds and soil into some bamboo fabric and then just water it every so often and see what grows out of it.
Yeah, I love that idea. One of the things that you said that I don't know, because the whole time you were presenting, I'm like, this is so fun. Like even the video you made of her was joyful and playful almost. And yeah, look at that. It just, I love that. And then you described how you literally became part of an ecosystem because you weren't walled out of it. The windows weren't there keeping it out. And because of that, you got to play within that space and within that ecosystem. And that is when we talk about like ancestor work and stuff, we talk about going out in nature and connecting. But play is such a part of grief. We say grief in one hand, joy in the other. But that's a really important part. And so I really liked that you even just brought that up because I kept thinking that listening to this and like seeing it, I was like, this is so just fun. And like, who doesn't love the idea of gardening? And like, who here didn't have, or maybe this is just me because I love gardening, but like as a little girl, I would pick weeds and like stick them in my pockets of my dress or just scoop up dirt, And so even the idea, and like you were saying, there's soil in the pockets sewn in, I was just like, this is fun, as well as, being
Not approaching
resourceful for the
it,
earth.
yeah, not approaching it as like this macabre, scary thing, which we don't do here in our communities, but is still like kind of the normal response the outside world has a lot of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of fun doing this. Like we were just running around. And the Lynn's kids also had their own ideas of what they wanted to put into the clothes. So I just let them do whatever they wanted. And I feel like part of the, yeah, like ancestor work and just sitting outside long enough and you get bored enough and it's like your creativity kind of takes over. And then this happens.
Yeah. I mean, we say we have such a busy world that you have to be still to hear it. Like, and boredom opens up your mind to hear it. And I think too, our ancestors are probably always trying to plant these seeds in our head. But again, we're too loud, we're too busy. And so being able to find that space, which is usually in nature. Yeah, that's nature or the shower seems to be the place that I get all this like input. I'm like, oh yes, that's the idea.
Totally the shower. The shower's like portal.
Zephy said that these would also be great for pets, like making little sleeps, because who doesn't, so many people bury their pets in their own backyard and have like memorial gardens and stuff. So yes, Zephy, that is a great idea. And Hugh, there you go.
I think I'm gonna do that for my dying pets. I have 2 elder pets, so that's a great idea. Thank you for sharing it.
And that is a thing, like we talk about a lot, is grief around our pets, and that it's not really I don't know. I don't want to say that it's not respected, because that's not the right word, but it's not, people don't hold space for pet loss in the same way. But what a beautiful offering for families, and then to know that they can come back and that there's like life growing from this death and this whole, yeah, regeneration. I love that. One thing that is also really cool, actually, I'll read what Zephy wrote. There was recently a study showing that there's a third state of existence after death within the body where cells mutate and continue living. It would be fascinating to find a way for Deathwear to continue nourishing that new cycle.
I
Because
just learned
that's,
about that too, Zeffy. I just learned
What?
about that. Yeah.
well, I mean, it totally makes sense. In week 3 of Death School, we talk about decomposition and how you slow it down is with ice. But once you die, you become a whole village. You become a whole new ecosystem for all these little gut flora that are, doing their job that they've been waiting to do. They know what to do. And I see this again as like feeding this nourishment and this life. And so therefore you get to continue. One thing with water cremation that they found is that, we break down to the same elemental things like, sodium, nitrogen, sugars. But within that, there's these micronutrients that are unique to each person. And so even knowing that like your body is so unique in the micronutrients that it grows, that whatever grows from our people through composting or water cremation does literally have little aspects of them that nobody else could do to nourish it. So yeah, this whole thing, I was just like, this is so beautiful.
Yeah, I just heard about, I want to read this book called 10% Human, and it's about the microbiome, about how like there's literally like there's trillions of bacteria that are, while you're alive, it's like it's in your gut, and it's like a literal mega city in there just hanging out. So that's
Yeah. And we got to take care of them. Don't take antibiotics. No, just kidding. You can do whatever. But this is feeding that, yeah, that third part of us, right? Our little universe that's living on because we've died. Like that's the only way that they could survive, is through our death.
Mhm.
So I'm going to get scientific now. How would this work if they're buried in it? Because burial typically takes place, a green burial in the United States legally can be 18 inches, which is like 1.5 feet. Would there be kind of a hybrid where it's kind of multiple layers of dirt and seeds so that we know that there would be growth? Because whatever they're wearing is still going to break down and feed the oil or soil, which is going to feed everything that's above the soil too, and those little seeds. So is that kind of what you envisioned, or?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea though. I have not thought this all the way through. Like, as I said, I'm a concept artist.
Yes.
So I like to really just like kind of delve deep into ideas and prototyping. And again, that's my background in fashion. But I think the multi-layerness of like, what if you, from the level that you bury a body, what if you plant seeds of plants or even decomposers, right? Like fungi or, other plants that are able to grow upwards or even nourish the soil all around it through just being there and existing. And the layers above
Exactly.
it could just be whatever plants or vegetables or fruits that can grow from that layer of soil.
Yeah. So with green burial and natural organic reduction, that's what they do. They have to be laid out on some sort of organic material. So like with green burial, a lot of times they'll just pick native grasses and sunflowers or whatever's around and place that at the bottom of the grave, then place the body on top. And that's because there's already oxygen and water and living creatures within those grasses and stuff. And so that helps expedite the decomposition and the breakdown of the body. But then it also expedites all the nutrients that are going up now in the soil and creating new
Mhm.
soil. So that's when I thought of this, I was like, this could be like a layered movement.
That's what permaculture is like
Yeah.
a big portion of it is what I was learning there was they would take a lot of just like their native, I forget what the species is, but the type of like grass that grows native to Vietnam, dry it out and they would pack it. So for instance, we were growing coffee trees organically and but you still want to do it in a way that isn't just sucking all the nutrients from the land. So you're kind of planting some of this here, doing like creating a pond or something there. But with the permaculture, what they did was they started to like get charcoal from burning like old branches, like old stuff, taking bits of that, layering it, and then layering, amounts of hay, and just creating that like bio sustenance for the plants that you want to bear fruit. And a lot of this land that I was on was not to plant, it wasn't planting food, it was planting for the regeneration of the soil. So there was a lot of variety in the kind of grasses and what the farmers were doing to continue to regenerate like their what how they wanted to grow. Like they were also growing mushrooms for selling too in the hay.
Yeah.
Mushrooms love hay.
I love that. And yeah, you think about so they do kind of regenerative land work with a lot of the natural burial sites because they've been used for farming or like stripped of the whole forest. And so when you do this, when you return your body, when you add all this plant life, you're creating new soil, which I didn't. And I'm sure Hugh, now you know a lot about soil, but it's you need soil to take the carbon out of our atmosphere. We always think like our trees, we need our trees, they're the ones who clean our air, but soil does too. And so when you talk about regeneration to become soil that does grow more trees or whatever, but just that the aspect of like creating nutrient rich soil heals the earth. Like soil is really important. So having materials that break down that literally help regenerate the earth is brilliant. It's beautiful too. I just love the style. I was thinking, I'd be buried in that for sure.
Yeah. I do have a slide of like some of my other works too if
Oh yeah,
you are
show us.
interested.
I
But
love though,
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously not a wedding dress, but the t like it being white and it feels like that has like some nods. In my mind, there was this romantic like getting married to the earth vibes.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think just being able to just see how people have dressed throughout history, but also just like, connecting to clothing in a way that's more embodied and less about trends and even, not following whatever people tell you to wear. It's like one step forward into this conversation around, earth being a body, like the earth body, and how we dress ourselves, how we create our clothes. Like um yeah, like one of my projects is called the Cloud House, and it's basically a free community space out of my garage, and I teach people how to sew for free if they
Oh,
want, like if they want to do it,
cool.
like I think like just having the skill set sharing aspect of creating of even just thinking about deathwear and how a community can create together a garment for someone who's dying or who is dead, right? It's not just like a lone thing. That's how I feel with fashion and just with clothing making.
Yeah, and Hugh, like, do you know about shrouds? I feel like that's so
Mm.
intersectional too for you. When you said the community can make a garment, when my grandfather on my mom's side died a few years ago, he was very active in his community. It was a Native American community, and so each member of the community created a square for a quilt. And after, well, when it was finished before he died, and so he actually was wrapped up in this quilt during his hospice and during his death, and then they wrapped him in it, shrouded him in it, and he was buried in it as well. I feel like that could really be a leg of this
Yeah.
because the community can get involved in making it. I love that you're teaching people to sew. That's so special and such like a lost art in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's just fun making with other people. I don't like to just be in, my studio and just be by myself. I like that there's people who come. And sometimes it's not even just like they'll just hang out.
Yeah, Lauren called it a wisdom share community
Yeah.
space. Love that. Yeah, love
Well,
that.
you learn from each other too. I'm sure that you get to hear stories from these people who come to your space, and we all learn from each other. So it's really important to create these spaces. And I'm glad Deathfolx has it digitally, but to have a house that you can actually go to is it's really
Really,
cool. Do you want to explain this red womb though? Because I'm like super in love.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, so this is more like it's a project that started with my mom. In China, we have this thing called like sitting, like I forget how to translate it, but it's like you basically have to sit for a month after you give birth. So kind of like birth wear, life wear. Um, so and she hand knitted this one red sweater in the month that she gave birth to me. And that's the only sweater she's ever made. It's right now, it's hanging in a museum here in Vegas.
Oh,
And yeah, the Barrack Museum, if anyone is interested in or is in the Southwest area. But the second sweater I knit in 2018, and it was in dialogue with her sweater. So I do this thing where I interview my mother about what she felt, why did she do it, or what was that feeling like of knitting by hand? Because I knit my sweater with all the ideas and intentions she put into her sweater. Except for me, I am non-binary and I don't plan to have children myself. So I extended the arms outwards as a way to like signify like my birthing is like creativity, is through ideation, through imagining a different world that isn't just, white male centered, and in a way also carving out the center for me to symbolize like that's not where my priorities are. And both of these sweaters are made from wool yarn. Mine is from all dead stock materials. So dead stock meaning like wherever the yarn or fabric, wherever that came from, they just don't want any more of it. So they stop producing it. And instead of it going to a landfill, you buy it, you pick it up. So it doesn't end up in the landfill.
nice. I like the Goodwill too. Erin
Yeah.
knows 99% of my clothes come from thrift stores because I'm very, like I can find very fancy stuff for half the price, but also I do not like our throwaway fashion, which has become such a trend of like Shein and all these gross, stinky clothes. They smell weird. I don't know. I feel like they always have a weird smell to it.
They
So
do. They smell like glue.
they
Yeah,
smell
because
like chemicals and glue. Yeah, not
they
good.
are made of chemicals. Yeah.
So wearing them, I just think about that too. We're so like health centered, and then we cover our body in like these chemical clothes. We're like, oh, but look how cute I look. No. So do you do that often too? Like it's like regenerative fashion to take
Yes.
pieces.
Yeah, so with the middle photo, with my friend Izzy, they're modeling it. A lot of times I'll just go to Goodwill and find tablecloths, and the bottom so the bottom is a pair of pants that was made from a wedding dress train, and I do that a lot with my own clothing. Like when I get bored, I'll sometimes just start sewing on like just cut fabric from whatever tablecloth I have laying around and just sew it onto it, kind of like embroidery or patches, just to like spice things up. Like here, I just added these onto my collar because I was bored of the shirt. And that's it gets like a practice of like kind of saying no to fast fashion, right? You get bored of something, you just add more to it or take away.
I love that. Yes. And
Awesome.
what was the name of the museum? I wanted to write it down. It started with a B.
Yes, so it is the Barrack Museum. It is housed under UNLV, and they currently have an exhibition called In Relation, which is what my artwork is in, and it's all about motherhood and the varying degrees of how mothering kind of shows up in various artists who are in the show's life. So rather it being mothers or having been mothers or have come from a very it's like different way of upbringing. So yeah, if you're in that area, you should check it out.
Awesome. Wow, you are really fascinating. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, and yeah, and welcome to our community too, because I think you'll like it here.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now.
Yes. And then we have just a few more minutes here. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, Zephy, you seem to have some lots of thoughts, which I loved you putting those into the chat.
Thank you for
Nobody.
sharing your thoughts. I'm just now reading them.
Oh yeah, you can definitely read all the chat stuff because this is definitely, I have a feeling, going to be a favorite watch. And that's what we're doing too. The next 3 months is a whole series on, what are we putting into our ground and how does that affect things, and the different options that we have. Because we talk about don't do embalming, but are we wearing a polyester pantsuit to be buried in? I hope not. But
Right. Yeah.
are you, is that counteracting or is it not doing anything? Like, okay. So
Yeah.
taking that next step and really consciously thinking of it. And I do think there's going to be a lot of people like gardeners and just people who care about the earth who are just going to be attracted to this idea, whether they're able to grow a whole garden where they are, like just knowing that they're not taking away from the earth, but giving
Right.
back.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking a lot about even just the way we have funerals, right? Like with how Tanya was literally curated a show to grieve her mother. And in this way of like kind of bringing objects, bringing like voice notes, like having an artist to really think about a person and then putting that person in the space without them being present. And Deathwear can be part of that. It could be shown. But like I really like I would love to take part in funerals in that way. Like that allow you to kind of curate in a way that's not like a one day thing. It could be like you could
Mm-hmm.
walk into a space and feel that person.
Yes. We actually had an artist, Amy Coing, right? Is that who you're
Yeah, yeah,
thinking?
yeah,
I
yeah.
see you.
Good.
She had an exhibit for her aunt who was killed when she was a little girl before Amy was even born. And that's what it was. It was like this living experience. She recreated the flowers that were used at her funeral and like brought in actual tapestries from the funeral and then had interviews with the family members about like what this loss did. And so, yeah, to walk into a space and like feel them and live in that and not have it just be 2 hours at a funeral home,
That's
that is beautiful, right? Like how to
gives
be able to
your
continue to
grief.
spend, yeah, to continue to spend time with them in a space like a little living museum to them. And actually to put all those, like, I like the idea of curation because you're intentionally what needs to be in this space to bring them there, not just, okay, I mean, I've done some really gorgeous and fun funerals with like walls full of balloons and streamers and stuff, and that maybe is them. But to really slow down and intentionally say, like, how do you want to have that space look? Like, what? I never even thought about that. And now we're talking about funerals next week. So it's perfect because I have a whole new concept of like how you can really create a good grieving space
Yeah,
with art, with curation, with bringing in the person. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Tanya Gayer 2022. I wanted I wanted to end with, well, we only have two people here, but maybe Erin, you can answer it too. You were talking about like questions to think about, but one of the things was what sentimental items would be shown. And I think that that's a good, intriguing question of like, what sentimental item of me would I want to have shown that I think people would be like, this is Lauren's house or whatever.
Yeah.
So have you, Hugh, thought about that? Of like what sentimental items you would want to have at your funeral?
Yeah, I have a collection. I have I feel like my journals. I have like a suitcase full of journals, and I feel like it would be really, really beautiful to be able to like take certain bits of things I've drawn in the past and be able to either frame them or curate them on a wall space that because I would love to be celebrated in a way through my ideas, through the things
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I created, right, or drawn. Um, yeah, I think that would be it for me.
You get to share your wisdom one more time with everybody too. I think, when you get to be that personal. What about you, Erin?
I've really never thought about it for myself personally. I've never put myself in the shoes, which I feel challenged by, I guess. Is it weird that the first thing I think of is like my satin pillow?
Mm-hmm.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
I just love nothing
Yeah.
more than laying down on my satin pillow at night where my head goes down. Yeah. I'll think
I
about it some more. It's like my unfiltered answer.
I once saw a show that was Frida Kahlo, the really famous Mexican artist. She and it wasn't something she wanted, but in London she had basically all of her objects, all of her sentimental objects on display. And I thought that was really like devastating, basically, because she had no say, right? Like I forgot what the thing is, but basically her entire estate went to this one family who wasn't anyone who cared for her and her objects and sentimental items enough. So it was all on display, like even her medicines. So
Mm, that
yeah, I
is
think
really,
about that a lot. I think about like especially seeing Tanya's work. I was like, yeah, you really have to be intentional with the objects. And if you're able to like even just something that can be planned for when that
Mm-hmm.
time comes, I think that would be, especially if you're like a creative or artist and who have assets that may be able to generate income for you, your offspring, like a cultural foundation you're building and wherever you are. I think it's
legacy
something I think
of
about too.
I was just
that.
thinking, this is my new funeral plan, is what if you have like an open art show? What if you, because we always have people who like, they were a quilter, so they'll lay out all the quilts. But what if there was an actual like common purchase the things that they created with love, have all their art, and then have that money go to a donation or whatever. So the people get to keep someone they love. But I never thought about that, like going to a funeral, but really having it be their final showing. Like that would be really cool.
It's really
Yeah.
cool. That is really cool.
Yeah, a final showing.
I've only thought about this from the inverse, like the opposite perspective. And I'll talk about it through when my sister died, but it's like so relatable, when you go through the things of your loved one after they've died, especially if there's like urgency, like you need to get it out in a quick amount of time and everybody's grieving and there's all this, what should we do? Like, on one hand, everything is so meaningful, and on the other hand, it's stuff, and people land anywhere like on the spectrum with regard to how they feel about that. But my sister was an artist, not to your degree, but she was. I shouldn't say that. She had a whole bunch of unfinished sewing projects,
Mm-hmm.
and when she actually died, she was in the middle of this big project, like painting and beading this skull, and
Wow.
yeah, I just wish that, I wish that we had thought about ahead of time, like how to manage that because it was like crisis management instead of being
Mhm.
as intentional and beautiful as it could have been.
Mhm. Well, if it's still around, it could be continued.
Yeah. I
That's
think
true.
my son took it incomplete and took all the pieces and nothing's happened since.
So, yeah.
Same thing with all
I'm
the
just,
clothes.
yeah, there is a nonprofit that will finish your loved one's sewing projects. I
Oh,
have to find it, but I saw it. Have you seen that,
wow.
Erin?
Yeah, the irony is that when my sister's best friend died 2 years before her, she took a bunch of her clothes and she was in the middle of making blankets out of them for her best friend's children. and then my
Mhm.
sister died, and so now those projects are like 2 generations incomplete.
So you can find this group of like people all over the United States and you send it to them and they're just like they finish it. So like it'll be I saw this one where the arm of the sweater didn't get finished, you know. I think of Susanna who knitted this
Yeah,
blanket until the day she died. Like but so many
literally.
people don't get to finish it and so to have somebody say I'll finish it for you and then send it back and now you can wear the sweater your grandma was trying to make you at the end of her life. It's a sweet concept that I didn't think of, and maybe you could start that in Las Vegas. I'm just
I
saying.
could. Well, we're actually doing something like that on October 6th at the Cloud House. We're calling it tejido. I'm not a Spanish speaker, so I just said it wrong, but it means weaving. And we're bringing in indigenous artisans to my house, and we're just going to sit and talk and finish our projects together. And people in the community can just bring their mending projects or have questions, and they can just come and ask. And it's an intergenerational activity, and it's also just kind of like, okay, we got to finish our projects.
I love that. I have so
Yeah.
many unfinished projects. Like that's such a sweet invitation. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, this has been absolutely wonderful. We're so glad that you joined us today and shared all of your knowledge with us. And it's just exciting. Like, I feel like we got to be part of the co creation with you a little bit too. So,
Yeah, I
thank you
really
for
appreciate sharing this space with me and for everyone's chat comments. They're all so inspiring. Like, yeah,
yeah.
thank
Well,
you.
Hugh, before you go, please put in the chat and then also say out loud, because people watch this later, where you can be found. Uh,
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at desert_hue. And also for the Cloud House, which is my social practice community space. It's welcomehome_LV. And you can also find me on my website at welcome-home.studio. And I think that's it. I do like letters, and my address is out in the open. So if you want to send me letters, I would love that as well.
how cool is
I
that?
love snail mail. I
Yeah.
love that.
Very
All
cool.
right.
Awesome. This was hard.
Yes.
Thank you, Hugh, for educating us and spending some time with us today. And we will look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, guys.